Nearly 4 years ago, Hyundai introduced a new subcompact SUV to the lineup called the Kona. The Kona was designed to slot below the Tucson as the company's new entry-level sport utility vehicle. Now, of course, over the years, the Kona has gotten a refresh, and for 2022, they're introducing a new high-performance model that, quite frankly, as an enthusiast, I wasn't expecting. But today, I'm out here at Sonoma Raceway with the brand new 2022 Hyundai Kona N. It has the same turbocharged four-cylinder with up to 286 horsepower underneath the hood as the Elantra N and the Veloster N. So the big question I want to answer, if you guys are looking for an affordable, high-performance SUV in a segment that doesn't really have any competitors, how does the brand new Kona N stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Hey guys, I want to take a quick break to thank you all for watching this video and talk about a bunch of new merch that we just added. It's all about the thunk. If you're interested in showing your support by purchasing this shirt, as well as a few others, be sure to visit the merch shelf located just below this video. Now, speaking of support, be sure to like, subscribe, and be sure to turn on all those notification bells so you're always alerted every time we make a new upload. Now, I mentioned that this vehicle doesn't really have any competitors because it's true. There are no mainstream auto manufacturers that have a high-performance subcompact SUV like this Kona N. And of course, because it's an N model, their high-performance division, it starts with the motor. This is the company's 2-liter turbocharged direct injection four-cylinder. It's the same engine that we find in the Elantra N and the new Veloster N. It's got a larger turbo versus the original 2-liter that they introduced a couple years ago in the Veloster, and it makes 276 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque. When you guys hit the NGS button, the overboost button, it actually will give you for 20 seconds up to 286 horsepower. So nearly 300 horsepower and an affordable subcompact SUV. It makes this vehicle really, really special. It all goes out through one transmission option. It's an 8-speed wet dual-clutch transmission. Hyundai makes a wonderful 6-speed manual, but they don't offer the manual in the Kona N, so you'll have to buy the Veloster N or the Elantra N if you guys want to shift your own gears. Now, the sad thing about the new Kona N is Hyundai did not decide to offer this vehicle with all-wheel drive. So instead, it's still a front-wheel drive vehicle with their E limited slip differential, their corner carving differential. Hyundai says they could have done all-wheel drive, but it would have made the vehicle far more expensive, far more complex, and that's not the mission of N. They want this to be affordable, fun, that you can still daily drive. And they promise, as we go out on the track here in Sonoma, that you don't miss the all-wheel drive system. Now, of course, this is still an SUV, so you're probably wondering, how does it do in terms of towing? It's not recommended to tow, so if you guys want to tow things, you'll have to go for a different SUV. And fuel economy, this is rated to go 20 in the city and 27 on the highway. So it's a pretty significant drop from the regular Kona, but of course it has more power. And in terms of the curb weight, this is the heaviest of all the N models as expected. As this one sits, it weighs in at around 3,300 pounds. Now, as we shut the hood, let's talk about the styling of the brand new Kona N, because Hyundai gave this vehicle a pretty extensive refresh for 2022. And it was one of the first vehicles to introduce their latest design language, where you have the headlights and the LED daytime running lights kind of divorced from each other. They gave us a new front fascia, of course, with their latest Cascade style grille. You can see there is a very specific N badge here because this is a full-on N model. This isn't an N line, although they do offer an N line. And you can see the headlights are full LEDs. These have the 3-element reflector style, and the turn signals are also an LED turn signal. It's part of the daytime running light. And overall, let me know what you guys think of the styling. And this bright red exterior with the gray accents, it certainly is an attractive looking SUV, if you can even call it that. It really looks more like a hot hatch. If there's one thing I don't like, it's right here. These little 3 areas here which look like vents but are actually just fake because they're closed up. It's supposed to give this car a little bit more of an aggressive look, but I think they could have just done without it. Now, the Kona has around 6.7 inches of ground clearance if you guys go for the regular model. The Kona N has 6.8 inches of ground clearance. So surprisingly, it actually was lifted ever so slightly, but it's still on the low end for a compact SUV or a subcompact SUV, but it definitely gives you that SUV seating position. So it does feel strange. I was thinking this car would look more like a hot hatch from the side profile, but it really does look a lot like an SUV. I like how, of course, Hyundai did paint the fenders here, so you don't have any of those fake plastic cladding. And then you can see the wheels. These are specific to the Kona N. They're a 19-inch wheel wrapped in 235/40 with tires. Now, these are Pirelli P0 summer tires. And then Hyundai also upgraded the brakes. These are 2 inches larger in diameter for the front rotors and about an inch larger at the back. You can see the caliper is just a floating piston design. Hyundai N does not do an actual Brembo caliper. I kind of wish they would, but it would, again, increase the cost, increase the complexity, and they claim that you're still going to get very strong braking performance, which we'll find out later on the track. Now, of course, N models include things like black painted mirrors, a lot of blacked out trim. You still have these blacked out roof rails, of course, on the roof, so you could put a roof rack on this vehicle and still use it to do SUV outdoorsy things by putting things on the roof. Surprisingly, no sunroof. I don't believe Hyundai is offering a sunroof on the Kona. It may be an option, but I'm not entirely sure. They haven't finished finalizing the option packages. You can get it on the Elantra N. And then coming over to the rear, you can see equally refreshed taillight design where it's a full LED. You can see LED brake lights, tail lights, LED turn signals, and then LED reverse lights. And then of course, being a full-on N model, you have a nice spoiler on the back where it's black painted, not quite as big as what you see on some of their other models, but I also think that the triangular third brake light is also a nice addition that makes it look unique. And then of course down here, there's another N badge at the back, its own unique rear bumper with these massive barrel type exhaust systems. Now, the dual exhausts on the N models are very distinctive, but the sound is even more distinctive. So let's go ahead and fire it up so you guys can hear how it sounds. And just like the Elantra N and the Veloster N, this thing sounds damn good. You wouldn't expect an SUV to make a noise like that. Now, let's talk about the cargo capacity, because you buy the Kona model because you want the extra space. And this has roughly the same kind of room as what you might get out of a Volkswagen GTI. There's about 20 cubic feet of space with the second row seats up. If you fold down that second row seats, it'll expand it to about 46 cubic feet of space. So about the same as something like a Honda Civic hatchback as well, if Honda would ever make a Civic hatch, or a Civic Si hatch. And if you look underneath here, there's a little bit of storage, and then you can see here, it looks like a spare tire could go there, but this one here doesn't have it. It's probably because it's an early pre-production model. So now that we've talked about the exterior, let me hop into the inside of the 2022 Kona N. Now, it got a refresh this year, just like the outside, where Hyundai really upgraded the tech. But once I get in, I notice it does sit up higher. You get that kind of slightly elevated SUV seating position, and then as I get in and shut the door has a relatively solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built off of the K2 platform. It's the previous generation, same platform as the Veloster N as well. Now here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see this is Hyundai's smart access key, intelligent start. It does have remote start because this is the dual clutch model, and it is available with their digital key function. So I could use my Android device as your key if you guys have an Android and once you pair it up with your actual specific vehicle. Now to start the vehicle up, I really want to push this button here because it's red, but the start stop button is over here where you'd expect it to be. But once you start the vehicle up, you can see there's a new 10.25 inch display here in the instrument panel and another 10.25 inch display here for the infotainment system. This is Hyundai's latest infotainment system, their Blue Link telematic, and it looks really nice. I mean, to find two 10-inch displays in this segment is kind of a little bit harder to find, but sadly, because this is one of their more affordable models, it doesn't have the best in terms of the materials back here. So again, if you're looking for high quality materials, you're not going to find it. There's lots of hard touch plastic, although this right here is actually slightly padded versus this is hard touch plastic. Up here is where the actual hard touch material is. This right here is interesting. I almost think that Hyundai should have used like a silver trim piece here to kind of break up all of the black plastic. There's only one interior color choice. This is also hard touch plastic over here. Over on the driver's door panel or any of the front panels, you can see scratchy hard plastic as well. You have a black accented door handle. It would have been nicer if it was silver. It just needs more contrast in here. And then the driver window is one touch up and down, along with the front window, but not the back window. So the two front windows are one touch, but not for the back windows. The Kona N also gets its own N-specific steering wheel, which has a nice fat rim. You have the typical N1 and N2 customization buttons, and then the NGS button, that's the N grin shift. That's your overboost function, which you can use when you're driving this vehicle out on the road. Some more piano black plastic. There's these metal accented paddle shifters, and then the steering wheel itself has a manual tilt and telescoping adjustment. You can easily get a comfortable driving position for me. This particular one here is also missing the heads-up display. So I believe you can get a sunroof actually where there's a flip-up heads-up display that's part of like a premium package. This one does not have it. It doesn't actually project onto the windshield, but it's nice that, again, Hyundai offers that feature. And then over here, you do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you do have to plug in your phone. Hyundai's larger screen doesn't allow you to do that. Now, of course, there's a specific N mode here where it shows you all these different indications for performance. You have a G meter there, and then you also can activate the launch control as well. That's all a lot of customization because there's so many different drive modes in this vehicle, but Hyundai says that a lot of their customers really like the customization where you can adjust the engine, steering, suspension, the limited slip diff, the exhaust sound. That's all very nice. Your drive mode selector is down over here. If I kick this over into sport, you can hear the exhaust gets louder. The gauges also changed the look and display. There's also a snow mode, which is funny because this is a front drive vehicle, a normal and an eco mode. Then if I just push the N button here, you can see it puts the tach front and center. So that's a really, really great performance feature for this car. Over here, this car does also have a factory embedded GPS. You can see that's what it looks like. It's pretty easy to use. It's one of the easier ones in the industry. But most of you are probably going to be using the Apple CarPlay anyways. Down here you can see there's single zone automatic climate control, and then you have heated seats over here in the front. Lots of empty buttons, however, so it would have been nice if Hyundai gave us like a heated steering wheel or cooled seats perhaps. You do have a wireless phone charging pad over here with a little bit of storage, and then if I put the vehicle in reverse, you can see there's your backup camera. It has trajectory, and it also has parking sensors, but no 360 camera. Wasn't really expecting that in this type of vehicle. There's a surprisingly nice hand-style manual parking brake. You have cup holders over here, and then there's a padded armrest right here with a pretty decent-sized storage console, but there's no power outlets in here. Instead, your USB port is over there. Above me you can see just standard incandescent lighting, no sunroof on this particular model, and then over here you can see the glove compartment is damped but not lined with felt. There is a light in there. It's a bin style glove box. The seats are unique to the N model. They are a little bit more aggressively bolstered. The driver's seat on my side is actually power, which is nice, but no memory seats. Like I mentioned earlier, they're heated. These are more comfortable versus the seats in the other two N models, and it's kind of necessary because it's an SUV, but they just don't hug you in place quite as much. So overall, the cabin feels usable. It has decent materials. It feels spacious enough, and it has good tech. So as a daily driver, this is one of the nicer SUVs that you're going to find. Now, the Kona is one of the smaller vehicles in the segment, but it does give you a relatively usable back seat. Hyundai says you get around 35.6 inches of legroom back here, which is actually about 3 inches less than what you find in the Elantra N. However, in the real world at 5'7", you can see the seat back is nice and high. There is a good amount of legroom. The floor here is not completely flat, but at least because this doesn't have those same types of seats in the Veloster and the Elantra N, you have a map or a storage pocket over here, a little bit of storage over here, and you have a USB port. No rear seat air vents, which would have been nice. And then in terms of the materials, it's still hard touch plastic. It's kind of scratchy. At least there is a padded area right here where I would rest my elbows, so that's nice. And then there's some more piano or just some black plastic trim. And then if you come over here, there is an armrest that folds down and gives you 2 cup holders. And then of course you have the signature performance blue stitching with the suede Alcantara. So it's a pretty decent sized back seat. And it has okay materials back here, but it's nothing super fancy. Remember, the Kona is kind of at the bottom of a Hyundai's SUV portfolio. All right, it's having a vehicle like this in this segment, which is super unique, is really interesting. And I love how Hyundai is kind of breaking traditional molds here because we're in a Kona, which is their subcompact SUV. It is only front-wheel drive. It has roughly the same ground clearance, but it's weird because I'm going out on a track here and I'm sitting so high up because I'm in an SUV. Now, I also want to apologize in advance. This stupid head sock is very, really narrow right here, so I have to keep this over my face, over my mouth. Otherwise, otherwise I can't see. So you're not going to be able to see my lips moving, but I'm going to be talking to you guys, at least trying to, while I'm out on the track in the Kona N. And remember, the Kona N is built off of the N2 platform, which is technically the older platform. It has the same 2-liter turbocharged engine, making 276 horsepower, 286 on overboost. It's got the same 8-speed wet dual-clutch transmission. The only transmission available, because Hyundai says that with the SUV buyer, they're going to want the automatic option. So it's not a bad option. Love it in the Veloster N, so we're going to see what it's like in the Kona N. And right off the bat, I'm noticing this SUV doesn't feel like an SUV out on a track. I mean, yes, you do have that slightly elevated seating position, but the suspension stays nice and flat. You don't feel like you're gonna roll over. It just feels like you can see a lot better. And the steering in this vehicle isn't quite as heavy as the other N models, I'm noticing. It's still relatively direct and precise though. But I'm just noticing it's definitely tuned for comfort a little bit more. At least the Kona in general is tuned for a softer feel. But the fact that I'm doing this in an SUV is odd because I'm sitting so high up and we're on a racetrack. But the transmission is just excellent. It's so crisp. It reads my mind. It wants me to it knows when to rev match the downshifts when I'm hard on the brakes. I am noticing the ride quality in the Kona N is definitely stiff. This feels stiffer than the other N models. But it's interesting because I don't have anything to compare this to because there is no competitor in this segment, but I am noticing I'm bouncing around more as you go around this track. Listening to that exhaust though, it's really refreshing to hear it coming from an SUV, if you could even call this thing an SUV. But wow, the visibility when you're on an SUV out on track is just a very odd experience for sure. But again, if you guys are skeptical of Hyundai knowing how to do a performance vehicle, it's because you haven't driven a Hyundai in a while, because you feel every ounce of the road in this vehicle. The seats also do a good job of hugging you. These are a little bit more comfortable. Putting my foot down here to the floor, you can feel. Wow, this thing just, it pulls. Hyundai says 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds with the Kona N. That's with the launch control, of course. Oh my God. Didn't think that I'd be getting up today and doing this in an SUV. Okay, definitely feeling the front end get light there as you go over that curve, which is normal because it's a pretty steep elevation. Oh God. Brakes are also pretty good. They feel responsive, even though these aren't Brembo brakes. I don't feel any fade or anything like that. Feel a little bit of understeer there. Oh my God. This car isn't quite as loud as the Elantra N. I actually just hopped out of that vehicle to try this one. But that's kind of okay because that's the mission of the Kona N. It's supposed to be slightly softer, slightly more comfortable, slightly more daily drivable. Oh my God, this is so crazy to be doing this in an SUV. Foot to the floor here. Okay, really good response from the engine. It keeps wanting to pull. Hard on the brakes here. Woo-hoo-hoo. I have the car in its N mode right now. That's what Hyundai set it up to be in. And you can feel the stability controls letting the back step out a little bit. There's a little bit of understeer there. Definitely feels a little odd in this vehicle, but you don't really have anything to compare it to in this segment. But you also get a sense that it doesn't love doing this quite as much as the Elantra N or Veloster N. But again, you get the practicality with this vehicle. You get the higher seating position. And it's also a really cool car. I mean, this thing looks like it's a cross between a hot hatch and an SUV, and it's also a really nice size. It feels still pretty lightweight. Hard on the brakes there. Pedal modulation is good. Lots of feel, lots of bite. So there's the understeer right there. See if I can... Ooh, okay. Felt that understeer there. I can also feel the ELSD trying to appropriate the power. I don't think I like the Pirelli tires on this car as much. I think the Michelins are better in the Elantra. Woo-hoo. Ooh, okay. Remember, N is supposed to be all about the grins, and I'm definitely getting that in this car, just in a slightly different way. Okay, there's the understeer again. Woo-hoo-hoo. Hear the tires protesting. Come on. Oh my God, there's the understeer again. Oh, Jesus God. That is fun. That is so much fun. Hyundai hasn't announced pricing of this vehicle yet, but if it's around $35,000, it's going to be quite a steal for enthusiasts out there. You know, there isn't really a comparison in this segment, but for a first effort from Hyundai, the Kona N really can hold its own out on a track. But we're going to take it out to the autocross course now. We're going to see how it does in that environment. All right, so the Kona N was a little bit not quite as enthusiastic out on the track as the Elantra N, but let me see if the Kona N does better out on the autocross course. Now, as I mentioned earlier, dual clutch only. I'm going to activate the launch control, and we're going to see how it does out here. A little torque steer there. But you know what? Sitting up high is really weird, but this thing surprisingly can handle an autocross course. And you know, I complained that this car should have all-wheel drive, but it doesn't really necessarily need it. It's just for the traction for those of you who might live in a fair weather area. But here on an autocross course here, you can feel the corner carving diff. Putting that power down, the brakes, they feel like they could use a little upgrade because the pedal gets stiff just like in the Elantra N. But wow, I'm sitting here not feeling like I'm gonna roll this thing. Oh God, okay. 42.987, so not a bad time. Really impressive car. Was not expecting this thing to handle as well as it does. And the launch control also is rather effective. There is a smidge of wheel spin, but I have to try that again just because why not? So again, I've lined up for the start line here. Foot hard on the brake and then push the activate button here. Sadly, I think the car is a little warm because it's not letting me activate the launch control right now. Launch control conditions not met. So we'll just go ahead and floor it and see how it does. Really impressive dynamics. And again, there's nothing really to compare the Kona N with in this segment because it's really in a class of its own. Oh, geez. The seats don't quite hug you in place as well as the sports seats in the Elantra N, but still, they do a great job. The understeer there is annoying, but feel that power. The torque sensing diff is trying to put that power down. It's having some trouble there. This is what N is all about, is the grin, the understeer there, like, well, okay. She may not get all of the fastest lap times all the time, but you still have a really good time doing it. So nearly 4 years ago when Hyundai first introduced the Kona, I was actually a pretty big fan because it had a turbocharged engine, it had a dual clutch transmission. It was one of the more sport-oriented models in the new class of subcompact SUVs. So when the company introduced the refresh model with this high-performance N, I was pleasantly surprised. You know what? After spending the day driving this vehicle on an autocross course and on a track, I'm actually really impressed. What Hyundai has delivered here is a true performance SUV that feels kind of like an SUV because of that higher seating position, but it also feels a lot like a hot hatch because of the suspension tuning, because of how responsive the engine is to the sound of the exhaust system, to the quickness of the transmission, and to the relative space. I mean, yes, you're not going to be able to, put very large people in the back seat, and you still can't get all-wheel drive. Honestly, all-wheel drive would have probably made this vehicle perfect just because it's an SUV. I'm not entirely sure how much more it would have cost Hyundai to do all-wheel drive, but it doesn't need all-wheel drive to do the kind of performance figures that it does, but I think for a lot of consumers, they probably wanted the all-wheel drive, and there are probably a lot of people that were more than willing to pay the extra cost. Now, speaking of which, this car does go on sale next month, Hyundai says by the end of the year, and sadly, I don't have pricing yet as of this video. They're gonna announce that within the next couple of weeks, but the regular Kona is like around the low $20,000 range. A Hyundai Veloster N's around $32,000. I would estimate this is gonna be the most expensive N model when it does go on sale. I'm gonna say roughly around $35,000 for this model here, especially if you guys get it with the sunroof and with the heads-up display option. But still, if it's around the mid $30,000 range, this is going to be a really, really enticing option because it's still around the same price as something like a Volkswagen GTI, which doesn't offer all-wheel drive, but it is gonna offer you, again, a little bit more ground clearance and a little bit more space in the backseat and in the trunk. So it's a really enticing option, and it also looks really good. I love what Hyundai has done here with the exterior styling. Well, all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2022 Hyundai Kona N. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.